Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. So, it's an honor to be with Forum 15. And we're talking about cities. It doesn't matter if the cities are 10,000 people or 100,000 or a million. The issues are similar. We're living longer. We have issues of climate change. Even if some people don't want to believe. We got population growth. And all of it is in urban areas. We got a public health crisis, physical, mental, emotional. We're living longer, not longer, much longer. This is the life expectancy. 200 years ago, all of these are the countries in the world. 200 years ago, we didn't have any country with a life expectancy above 45. Today, we don't have any country with a life expectancy below 45. In only 200 years, we have doubled the life expectancy all over the world. But with this, plus climate change and health, we seem to be facing an emergency, an urgency. How do we want to live? If we have a shared vision of how do we want to live, a lot of the decisions are simple, but we need to decide how do we want to live. Sometimes people say, Gil, what's a good city? I said a good city is one where I want to sleep at home, but I want to live outside. So today, we're going to be talking about sustainable cities and creating vibrant and healthy communities, happier people. I'm going to put some emphasis on equity and public health, and I'm going to put things into context. I'm going to talk a little bit about Bogota, 880 cities, and I'm going to have 5 messages. Why Bogota? Obviously, it's not the ideal city. It's decades behind most cities in Israel. But in my previous life, I lived in Bogota and I was commissioner. And I learned that sustainable cities is not really about the money. Also, now I advise many cities around the world, but before I was doing. For example, the first term, we built over 200 parks all over the city, small, medium, large. This was one of them. The Pope came here, gave a mass for 1 million people, and then he left, and nothing happened. There were not even sidewalks. For almost 27 years, nothing happened. Why? Because change is hard. Change is hard in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, change is hard in Haifa, everywhere, in Bogota, in Copenhagen, because when you try to change, the cave people show up. Who are the cave? They are the citizens against virtually everything. But we are there is to get things done, not to have 20 excuses why things cannot be done. So we gotta find the solutions to the problems, not problems to the solutions. We cannot accept no for an answer. And then it was like this for 27, 30 years, and in 3 years we turned it into the nicest park for passive, for active, for contemplative recreation, for things that people can do at their own pace. And it's not just about football fields, it's about also contemplative. Also things that people can do in groups, and the water is kind of magical, the kind of things that you can do. And it's really exciting, the things that you can do with the parks. Something else we did was the Ciclovia. What is this? I found a small program of a few kilometers and a few people, and we turned it into the world's largest pop-up park. Sunday mornings, we pop it up, and people come out to walk, to bike, to skate. How do you do? Simple. You open streets to people, you close them to cars, and the magic happens. Everybody comes out. We do 121 kilometers so that we could connect all people, all ethnicities and all income levels. And we get people of all ages, young and old and rich and poor, fat and skinny, anybody, but not everybody wants to walk or bike or skate. So along the road, people do aerobics and Tai Chi and Cha-Cha-Cha, anything. But all of it is around physical activity. And it's something that is really fantastic to have this wonderful mix of people. We get young and old, we get rich and poor, we get 1.7 million every Sunday of the year and every holiday. That's about 1 every 4 people, every week. The nice thing about this is that it changes minds. All of a sudden we realize that the streets are public space. They belong to all of us. They can have different uses according to the time of the day of the week of the year. And it has become like a positive virus that now cities all over the world of all sizes. I've seen it work in cities of 20,000 people, of 50,000, of 10 million, 20 million like Mexico City. And this is about social integration. Everybody mixes. In Paris, it's wonderful because everybody meets each other as equals. The owners of the large corporations and their minimum wage workers and their spouses and families, they meet as equals, and that is powerful. When my brother was mayor, now he's mayor again as of last year, he did over 280 kilometers of protected bikeways in 3 years. And went from a few thousand to over 500,000 cycling. And riding bicycles and walking, all of this is really important, always separating pedestrians and cyclists and creating a grid. In some of these places, they were so poor that it's almost impossible in Israel to imagine the level of poverty. And how it was transformed with good quality walking, good quality cycling. Why really good quality? Part of it is because it's going to be safer. But just as important, because we need to dignify the pedestrians. We need to dignify the cyclists. And this is transformational. And it's something that is important. As you can see, it's an issue of priorities. When I say it's not an issue of money, either they're walking and cycling or cars. And he said cars, the future administration. And when I'm talking about walking, I'm talking about anybody that moves at the speed of the pedestrians. But let's pass Bogota. Now I run two organizations. One is World Urban Parks, the other one 880 Cities. And I've been lucky to have been, or fortunate to have worked in more than 300 different cities. World Urban Parks, basically we want everybody to have quality parks within walking distance. And I hope that many cities in Israel become members, and you can find more information at worldurbanparks.org. But everywhere I go, people say, Gil, what's 880 Cities? Well, 880 Cities is not really about walking or cycling or parks or streets. Those are the means. Those are not the ends. The end is, how can we contribute to create vibrant cities and healthy communities where people are going to live happier? And when I'm working in cities, people always say, Gil, can my children walk to school? Can my grandparents ride their bike to the park? Can they walk or bike to get eggs or milk? I said, look, you don't need to be a transportation engineer. We call it the rule of common sense. Unfortunately, common sense seems to be the least common of the senses. Step number one, think about a child that you love, your son, your granddaughter. Anyone around 8 years old. Once you have that 8-year-old in mind, step number two, think of an 80-year-old that you also love, your parents, your grandparents, brothers, sisters. And when you have the child and the older adult, then step number three, would you send them across that intersection? Would you send them riding their bike to the grocery store or walking to school? Would they feel safe? What if you send it because it's good enough, if you don't it because it's not, and we got to do it better? What if everything that we did in all communities in Israel, everything, the sidewalk, the crosswalk, the school, the library, the buildings, everything had to be great for an 8 and an 80. It's not 8 to 80, it's 8 and 80 as an indicator species. Because if it's good for the 8 and it's going to be good for the 80, it's going to be good for everybody from 0 to over 100. We need to stop building cities as if everybody was 30-year-old and athletic. And let's build great cities for all. That is the concept of 880 Cities. It's simple, but it's powerful. Let me give you 5 messages. The first one, I think that everyone should become kind of like a guardian angel of the gentle majority. Who's the gentle majority? The children, the older adults, the poor. When we evaluate any city, anywhere, we should evaluate about how do we treat the most vulnerable people. And the most vulnerable are the children, the older adults, and the poor. Let me give you an example of it. Children. When we go out on any community in Israel, the children, we should have playability. Everywhere. We're on the sidewalk and there's a swing. We're waiting for public transit and there's a small parkade. This is an attitude that we need to change. America is not an issue of money. Many of these things are not expensive at all. But it's transforming the cities, making them fun. And some people say, oh, good, because children like fun and games. Yeah, but it is about fun and games, but it's more than that. Playing is how children learn. Playing is how children develop their muscle strength, their cognitive thinking, their capacity to learn languages. They learn to socialize. They develop friendships, a sense of belonging to their neighborhood, to their city, to their community. So we got to have playability everywhere in all cities in Israel. So we should have a goal. Everybody, every kid should have a park or a play area within 10 minutes, within a short walking distance. Within 4 years, not in 10, in 30, no, within 4 years. So let's start doing it. So this kind of magic will be able to happen. And now with the Dutch Foundation, Bernard Van Leer Foundation, which is doing work here in Israel, we're working in Urban 95. What is Urban 95? If you could experience the city from 95 centimeters, which is the age of a healthy 3-year-old, what would it look like? What would it look like? Get on a knee and look at it, and how would it look like? It's so interesting because most of our cities are not very nice for children under 95 centimeters. So how are we going to make them? And if we don't have a park, let's think what belongs to us, the libraries, the streets, the schools, the sidewalks. But let's have a play area. You know, some cities are transforming like this. They used to have this horrible pavement that they call a playground, and they turn it into a school park with lots of green area. Why lots of green? Because when the children play in green spaces, they reduce the attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. Like New York did this, and they didn't transform 1 or 2. They increased by 220 playgrounds without buying 1 centimeter of land. This is about school parks. And if we don't have a school, let's turn a street. Let's make it a play street. But let's make sure that kids have play areas within walking distance. So, Forum 15, what kind of role are you going to play in this? And if the children have it, then of course the older adults are going to have it also. Everybody's going to have it within 10 minutes. And older adults, this is so exciting. The older adults, we're living longer, not longer, much, much, much longer. I call it the new 65. You know, the people that have ever lived to 65, ever in the history of humanity, half are alive today. Half. This is quite something. You know, in Israel, the people over 65, 50 years ago, it was less than 5%. Today it's around 10%. And soon it's going to be more than 15%. Let me put it in absolute numbers. Now there's approximately 900,000 people over 65. By 2035, there's going to be 1.6 million. How good are cities for older adults? And these are not only older adults, but these 1.6 million, 1/3 are going to be over 80. So how good are cities? So that they are fun and exciting and healthy, and people, we need to change our mind about older adults. People are not retiring. People are rehiring. Maybe we should create a movement of the 60 plus alive. When I say 65 alive, it's because the 65 are alive. We need to remind our society, and also people want to live. You know, the biggest waste of resource that we have are the older adults. People retire and we cross them out as if they had died, except that they got 20, 30, 40 years left, and they are healthier, and they are wealthier, and they are more active. And they could be fantastic resource. Tutoring kids in the elementary schools, organizing activities in the parks, teaching language, organizing activities for other older adults. Our universities, 1/3 of the courses should be for older adults. They're hungry, they want to learn about music and art and science and geography. You know, in the last 200 years, we have doubled the life expectancy everywhere, including Israel. We have learned how to survive. But when all of these issues of climate change and public health crisis, now we got to learn how to live. And I think that Forum 15 is about that. It's about learning how to live. And some of the issues are like mobility, isolation. And I mentioned children, older adults, and the poor. The poor, I'm talking about equity. I'm not talking about equality. The other day, someone did a cartoon that I thought it was nice. He said, this is equality. No, some people are starting so far behind that some might not need a box. Others might need 2 and 3 boxes. So someone said equality, equity, and they did another cartoon. They said reality. But maybe Forum 15 is going to say, let's think outside the box. Maybe it's not just moving boxes around. Maybe it's taking away the wall. We got to come up with different solutions. This is how we've been building the cities. And it's not just developing countries. Look, these are the children living in poverty. In Israel, 1 out of 4 children lives in poverty. And in the US, 1 out of 5. So don't say, oh, we're okay because we're almost like the US. No, you need to benchmark your cities and the country with the best in the world. There is no excuse not to do it. So the US has many good things. This is not one of them. Benchmark yourself like with South Korea, it's 1 out of 15. Or with Denmark, it's 1 out of 37. Why does Denmark have 1 out of 37 and Israel 1 out of 4? From the point of view of mobility, if people have to have their private car, people are spending 25% of their income on mobility. And in Israel, I've seen in my 2 visits, lots and lots of people, you are being suffocated by cars. And I'm really glad that the mayor said, we know that the car is not the solution. You know, people don't have money for vacations, not even to go to dinner with their family. They're spending it all in their car. They will be spending only 5% if they use public transit and walked and biked. And this is great for, there is nothing that the government can do that would have a higher impact on the personal economy than allowing households to downsize from 2 cars to 1 or from 1 to 0. And it's great for the local economy because instead of buying cars built in China or Germany, it's going to stay in the local economy. People are going to go to the restaurants. People are going to fix their houses. I'll be faster with the other 4. We got a great opportunity, but also a fantastic responsibility. You know, today we got about 3.5 billion people living in cities around the world. In 40 years, we're going to have over 7 billion. Tomorrow, I'm going to speak at the university. And I'm going to tell the university, within the lifetime of today's students, within their lifetime, we're going to increase by 3.7 billion. That has never happened before and will never happen again. That's going to be in the next 40 years. So if that's happened in the next 40, let's see what we have done in the last 40. Because if what we have done is good, okay, let's do more of the same. What have we done in the last 40? Well, these 8 guys have more wealth than half of the world. Imagine the political, the economic power. This is how we've been building cities all over the world, sending the poorest people to the worst places, the ones that have less public transit and jobs and education and health. We've been focusing on cars, 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 and not on people's happiness. And this is the kind of cities that we've been building. And the emerging economies like Russia and China, India, Brazil are doing exactly the same things. We definitely need to change. It's very clear that we have been doing in the last 40 years. This is not what we should be doing in the next 40. So we need to change. The population in Israel is going to double in the next 30 years. So imagine the enormous responsibility that you have. It's like having a magic wand, and you could redo half of any city, half of Tel Aviv, of Haifa, half of any city. Well, even the best half, you would do it even better. That's the opportunity over the next 30 years. For example, everybody talks about density. Of course, we need density. But here are 10 different ways of having density. Some people talk about 40-story buildings. Yeah, that's one of the ways. You have the same density with 40-story buildings every other block that most people do not like because people start having more with the birds and the planes than with people, or with 6 or 7 stories next to each other, like Paris or Copenhagen or Barcelona. And we need to change. Look at some of the cities that have changed. Rotterdam used to have cars on both sides. This has been in the last 8 years. They took away the cars on one side, and look what happens. It's a totally different neighborhood. Or this one, where they're going to build something 10, 20 years from now. In the meantime, they do a small park. Or again, you know, the sidewalk. There's almost nothing as the symbol of democracy is the sidewalks. It's where we meet each other as equals. And it's something that has to be the best. Because everybody's pedestrian. Look, there was a river going through here 40 years ago, but 40 years was efficiency. So they built a road on top of the river. So now they're saying, can we go to Israel and bring the best people here? Probably not. This is important because we live in an ever more globalized world. And in a globalized world, the best people, they can live anywhere in the world. So part of your responsibility as mayors and leaders in the cities is how to retain the best people, how to attract the best people. So someone said, wasn't there a river going down here? And look what they have done in the last 7 years. They brought it out. Same street. This is about economic development, as well as the environment and sustainability. And so change is hard. That's why most cities do not change, because doing more of the same is easier. in Copenhagen when they were going to do the first pedestrian street, because the car was taking over Copenhagen in the 50s and 70s. Wait, so there's a pedestrian street for people walking? No, we have too many cars. We love our cars. And the weather is horrible. It's cold in the winter. It's hot in the summer. It rains all year round. But the number one reason why they didn't want pedestrian streets, they say, oh, walking, that's not part of our culture. That's for the Italians. Because the Italians are loud and they like to be on the streets, but we are Danish. We are cold and quiet. This is not our culture. Let me tell you now, the Danish are more Italian than the Italians. They love their pedestrian streets in the rain, in the sun. This is City Hall in Copenhagen. They took 18 of those parking places and they turned it into people's places, even in the middle of the winter. So when you're going to change in any city in Israel, 3 recommendations. First one, change is not unanimous. So when you're going to do a change and people say, oh, there is some concern, there will always be concern. Oh, listen honestly, but change is not unanimous. Second, the general interest must prevail over the particular. So when you are saying, oh, we're going to do a bikeway, and someone says, oh, but my business, no. Give me the argument that frame it on the general interest. And third, when you say no to something, you are also saying yes to something else. So when you say, oh, let's not do this park here, or let's not do this high density here, you're also saying, okay, that's fine, but then we're going to have more obesity, we're going to have more bad quality of air, we're going to have more congestion. 3, let's have great parks. And not only great parks, but great park systems. Some of the characteristics of parks need to be managed. Management, so that you have older adults and children doing bread. Some cities think that management is maintenance. No, maintenance, picking up the garbage and cutting the grass might be 20%. No, management is how to have uses, how to have activities, how to get the schools to use it, the older adults, the different ethnicities, how to have volunteers but give them the tools. When you are going to do something, ask the community. That's management. Going out and listening to community before, during, after, having the resources, human, financial. It's about safety. The parks, I saw this in London, England. Beware of the thieves. This is like an open invitation to the thieves of the city. You need a lot of police when the parks are empty. You don't need when they have a lot of people. What is the cheapest security in parks? Uses and activities. I find that many cities, it seems easier to find the millions to do the park than the thousands to make it work. But you need those thousands, and it has to have a nice fit with the system so that it also is good throughout the year. It's not something just in the summertime. So management, almost more than anything, is about uses and activities. It's about and it's not a lot of money, but you need to have that little bit to organize the people dancing and the people doing Tai Chi, or the people doing flowers or painting or doing laughing yoga. Should you do small parks or large parks? Unfortunately, you got to do both because they satisfy very different needs. The small park is the one that develops a sense of belonging. I meet my neighbors, also solidarity. But in the small park, I'm not going to be able to play football, so I need to have the medium-sized park. And I'm not going to be able to go canoeing, so then I also need the large park. So at the end of the day, we need all, the small, the medium, the large. It's not just about one iconic park. It's about having a good park system that has small, medium, large, active, passive, contemplative. And the benefits of parks, there are so many. But let's keep in mind that empty parks have no benefits. So we need to have uses, whether it's having fire pits, or it's having gardens, or pizza ovens, or having places where people can read, or have Wi-Fi in all of the parks. Let's keep in mind, it's about all of those little things. It's the flexibility where people can listen to music one day and maybe play bocce in the same place at another day. You have yoga, you have music, different nights of the week, knitting. You know, knitting is the fastest growing activity in North America in the parks. Why? Because the older adults are very lonely. Loneliness is such a big thing around the world that in the UK they created the Ministry of Loneliness last month. So it's about music and concerts and Wi-Fi. It's about having the older adults coming and reading to the children every day from 3 to 6 p.m. So it's also about those volunteering. It seems clear that successful parks is not just about the design and the construction, but it's also about management. So a good city in many ways is like a good park, integrated with nature and extremely safe, especially for children, for older adults. 4, we gotta have sustainable mobility. Walking, There's nothing as important as pedestrians first. Every single trip begins and ends by walking. We walk to the car, we walk to public transit, we walk to places. Everybody walks. That's how we were created. Just like the birds fly, or the fish swims, and deer run, people, we walk. We walk. The children, the youth, the adults, the older adults. We walk in the summer, we walk in the winter, we walk all the time, but we need to make it safe. Safe. Yesterday, people driving cars killed 741 people walking. And today, another 741. That's more than a person every 2 minutes. That's not civilized. They're not accidents. Accidents is when nothing could be done about it. They are incidents. That's why many cities are learning from Sweden and adopting Vision Zero. No one should die on the streets, walking or cycling or in cars or in transit. No one. And if we're going to improve walking, well, we got to make it a priority. This is not a priority. When we allow to do sidewalks, or when we allow the cars on the sidewalks, or when we don't even do sidewalks, we're telling these women every day, you are a second-class citizen. You know, don't do what city like Milano did. Milan used to be a magnificent city. What are they doing now? Milan are so suffocated with cars and motorcycles, they are allowing the motorcycles on the sidewalk. Horrible. Motorcycles and bicycles should not be. The sidewalk is to walk, is for people. There should not be any bicycles, any motorcycles. They are allowing the cars, which is horrible. It's like saying, I have a car, I'm powerful, I'm here. They used to have these boulevards, magnificent, like some of the ones that I've seen here in Tel Aviv. But now they're allowing cars there. Please don't do that. And if you're going to improve walking, nothing as important as lowering the speed. All the residential areas should be 30 kilometers or less. All. If you get hit by a car at 30, there is 5% probability of being killed. At 50, it's more than 80. And there's many, many studies. If we do a small island on a crosswalk, we eliminate more than half of the incidents. Why are we still doing crosswalk without an island? When we are going to eliminate more than half of the incidents. So these are not technical things. This is doable. And sustainable mobility is not only walking, it's riding bicycles, public transit, new uses of cars. I'm not saying that this is the end of the car industry, but the way we use cars is changing rapidly. People are saying, oh, driverless cars. Driverless cars, if we don't change how we behave, this is how cities look like without driverless cars. This is how they're going to look like with driverless cars. When we see a traffic jam, let's remember that the traffic jam is not the drivers, it's the cars. Whether they have a driver or not is the traffic jam. Riding bicycles, this could be Israel, anywhere. You know, people of all ages and all conditions. I mean, that's who you should be benchmarking with, Copenhagen. In Copenhagen, even in the rain, in the snow, in the cold, 41 out of 100 trips are done on bicycle. Why? Because there's a really good bicycle infrastructure. And they're not saying 41 is enough. No, they want to go to 50. You don't need special shoes. And it's about the combination of walking and cycling and public transit. How to increase cycling? It's not about signage. It's not about bicycle share. It's not about racks on the buses. Only two things increase cycling. One is to lower the speed in the neighborhoods. And two is to create a grid. So everything that I said about walking and 30K is the same for cycling. But we need to create a minimum grid. You're not doing one bikeway. We need a grid connecting all ages and all abilities. It's not for the 20 to 15 spandex. It's for everybody. We got to think of the daytime and nighttime and summer and winter. Everybody. And it's totally doable. That's why people bike in Copenhagen, because you got a grid. Just like we have a power grid or a water grid. And if we're going to put public transit, my brother is the mayor of Bogota, and he says that a civilized city is not the one where the poor have cars. It's the one where the rich use public transit. So let's invest in public transit that everybody can use. And I'm really glad that many of you spoke about public transit. And sometimes it's marketing. The mayor of Malmo told me people didn't like the buses. So what did he do with his buses? He put a nose, he covered the wheels, and now they look like trains. And sometimes people say, Gil, we need to invest in infrastructure for public transit. I say, infrastructure? Our cities already, 30 to 35% of our cities are streets. If we look at the cities from the air, 35% are streets. Are you going to do 45 or 55? It's what I call the mobility math. Are we going to have one of these? Or 140 of those? Are we going to have one of those or 145 of those? It's the mobility math. We already have the space. We need to decide how are we going to distribute the space. So part of it is about change. Remember that I said all of these things about change? For example, from the point of view of mobility, I know that there are some restrictions of public transit on Saturdays. But if you only allow people with cars to mobilize on Saturday, then only people with people, it's going to be an incentive for people to have more and more cars. And we need less and less cars. So we really need to have public transit every day. Bicycles, we got to get rid of the bicycles on the sidewalks and build grids of protected bikeways. And the last, let's focus on the benefits. It's not about doing sustainable cities per se. It's because sustainable cities is good for culture, for education, for recreation. Let me give you an example on health. Is this what the future looks like? You know, the issue of obesity is not how people look. The issue of obesity has to do with heart attacks and respiratory problems and anxiety and depression. You know, in Israel, more than 1 out of 5 people are obese. Almost 1 out of 4. We got to improve the school lunches. We got to improve the farmers markets all over the neighborhoods. Also, we need to be more active. Physical activity is almost like the magic drug. And it's not about doing marathons. It's just 30 minutes a day for adults, 60 minutes a day for children. And of course, nothing as simple as walking or cycling as a normal part of everyday life. And all of this is going to be good for physical health. But let's keep in mind that there is no health without mental health. Depression today is the leading cause of disability. If we get contact with nature, it's going to improve our mood, our cognitive attention. So we got to have nature in the homes, in the sidewalks, in the schools, everywhere. If we got green neighborhoods, we're going to lower the depression, the anxiety. So having green and having parks is not only because cities are going to look nice, it's going to be good for physical health, but also for mental health. So all of this is about how we're going to live. So I just want to end by saying, let's think outside the box. These issues are not technical. These issues are not financial. They are political with a big P. Not only the mayors, but everybody needs to participate. We need to create alliances, like a three-legged stool. One of the legs are the elected officials. Elected officials is important because some people want to be elected. Like the other day someone said, some want to be mayors. Others want to do as mayor. I hope that all of you are the second. You want to do, because doing is hard. It's so much easier just doing more of the same. So change, do it. We also, the second leg is public sector staff, but not just planners and transport. We got to invite public health. And we need to invite the environment and economic development and parks. And the third leg is the community. We got to get the activists, the media, the business, the universities. And how do we get these three legs together? By developing a sense of urgency. And if we have a sense of urgency, then we're going to develop a shared vision and action. Some cities have vision, but no action. They know what needs to be done, but they don't act. So they become frustrated. Other cities have action, but no vision. So they do a little here, a little here, a little there, but it's like a Frankenstein. It's chaos. But if you have vision and you have action, you can really transform these cities into cities for people. So this is about creating vibrant cities and healthy communities where all people are going to live happier. So 4 and 15, do it now. Thank you.